So good morning to those who arrived a little later. So we're going to continue with a reading, this time from Whispers from Eternity, a book of prayer poems and demands by Paramahansa Yogananda. This prayer poem is number 181, Baptize me in the flood of thy grace. I was first baptized at the font of this material world. Parental heritage gave me my body. The milk from my mother's breasts baptized me to the feel of flesh. Cloud-born rains, mountain springs, and meadow-nurtured food made me dependent on earth's sustenance. My imprisoned soul cried at last for freedom from the prison of confining flesh and solicitous maternal care. No more did I want to dwell within the fenced garden of the senses. Yes, I cried for freedom. Then at last the door of silence within me. Then at last the cloud of silence within me, holding thee remote, burst, and thy mercy rained upon me, cleansing me with thy grace. The rising waters of thy spirit broke the narrow boundaries of my soul, baptizing me in thine expanding waters of infinity. Power of thy flood of cosmic consciousness broke the embankments of my senses, and every little bubble of my consciousness dissolved to be baptized in the waters of thine omnipresence. So our reading today is about the inner kingdom. Many teachers and masters throughout life have come to tell us about this inner kingdom. We've heard it from Jesus, from Buddha, from Yogananda, from all the great masters. They've come to earth to remind us of this inner kingdom. Even Carl Jung, the psychologist, psychiatrist, said those who look outside dream, and those who look inside awaken. I'm sure he took the idea from the ancient yogic texts, but anyways, it's a contemporary statement of what is the truth here. Yet we seem to spend so much time seeking our happiness outside. We're constantly looking outside to find the lasting happiness that we all seek, peace and happiness. Yogananda stated that we all carry an inner paradise. Within each one of us, there's an inner paradise. And all we need to do is turn within to find that lasting happiness and peace. But until we commit ourselves fully to the spiritual path, we're going to continue to pursue our interests outside and follow the never-ending parade of desires, from here to there, up and down. And this is how we will continue to dissipate our spiritual energy. All the energy that comes into the new excitement over, fill in the blank. The new endeavor, the new opportunity, the new possibility, the new relationship. This is it, this is it. This is going to bring me that lasting happiness. But all it does, it just keeps dissipating the energy further out, and further out. When we commit to the path, we seriously commit to the path, we naturally become quieter. We live with greater awareness. We live with intention. We become more selective as to how we're going to invest our time and our energy. Everything we do becomes refined. Our thoughts, our words, our deeds are of a different caliber. And in this state of refinement, we become more loving, more compassionate, more available, more serviceful. There's a story in Autobiography of a Yogi, one of the many, of Yogananda. When he was young Mukunda, he was staying at his guru's ashram in Serampore. And this is where Sri Yukteswar would bring young disciples to train them, to teach them and guide them on the path to self-realization. And he put Yogananda in charge of some duties, welcoming the guests and supervising the other young disciples, until this young man, Kumar, came to the hermitage. And for some reason, his intelligence, his natural way of being just made him Sri Yukteswar's favorite, which is highly unusual because a guru usually doesn't have favorites. But anyways, the point is, you can read the whole story in AY. The point is, this young man was under the tutelage of a great guru. And when we live in the proximity of a great guru, we adopt their qualities. We become more radiant, we become more alert, more conscious. We draw from the guru that is close to us. The guru can be embodied and the guru can be disembodied. So don't think you need a physical guru to have this happen. So this young man lived in the hermitage for about a year, and then he decided he wanted to go visit his childhood family and friends. He wanted to go back. Sri Yukteswar was totally against this, but he never impeded his disciples' movements. So he went against his guru's wishes. He went and spent a few months at his childhood home, mixing with his old friends. And when he returned, a few months later, Yogananda said that gone was his serene countenance. Gone was his radiant face. Gone was that state of consciousness that he lived with when he was at the hermitage with Sri Yukteswar. And all that stood in front of him was an undistinguished peasant. Kumar had gotten a little lost in the world and developed a few bad habits. But this is what immersion in the world will do to us all. We can be very highly educated. We can be well-traveled. We can live in luxury. We can hold top-notch positions in the careers of our choice and still exhibit a peasant consciousness. This low level of consciousness, this unevolved consciousness, is an impediment. It's a barrier to the inner kingdom. Yogananda used to tell his disciples to always live in the self, capital S, in the soul self, and come down from time to time to eat, to talk as necessary, but then withdraw back into the self. At Mount Washington, Yogananda's headquarters, Yogananda always welcomed visitors, and he was a wonderful host. He entertained them with stories and anecdotes, but to his disciples, to the ones who were serious about the path, he was very quiet. He instructed in silence, through attunement. Sometimes just a look sufficed to get the message through. But to his guests, he was very outgoing and welcoming. So he lived in both worlds. He was very effective in the physical world for all those visitors and curiosity seekers, while always abiding in that inner kingdom. He said that silence is the altar of God. And we all need to explore ways of cultivating more silence in our lives. Silence is a sacred art that requires attention and dedication. We can spend a day in silence, have a meal in silence, maybe pull away from our activities and dedicate that time to silence. There are many ways that we can cultivate this in our lives. But silence does not end with the absence of sound. This is just the beginning of the journey into silence. We go into the silence of the mind. How do we cultivate that? By stilling the incessant thoughts that keep whirling around and around in our heads. We can be the only person in a desert, and the noise in our head would disturb the silence of the desert. We don't stop there. We keep going. We want to cultivate silence in the heart. And that silence comes from the absence of the little self. That little self that is constantly running the show. When the I, me, mine loosens its grip and lets go, then peace enters your heart. Yogananda said that the first step toward entering the inner kingdom, the first gate that opens to the inner kingdom, is peace, your inner peace. And a heart at peace is always silent. In that silence, in that peace, there's space to host the divine. So we all know that very well saying, very common saying, like attracts like. The divine will find a suitable environment to enter. The great Indian sage Ramakrishna used to say that the bumblebee used to make a loud noise when it was pollinating. It was pollinating flowers, but once it came into the nectar, it went silent. It had arrived. It was at the source. Our soul nature is quiet, very quiet. And that quietude comes when we are in tune with the source. Otherwise, ego consciousness is loud. It creates a lot of noise, even when we're not speaking. Yogananda did not come to just tell us about this inner kingdom. He brought us a roadmap, and he gave us the keys to access it. An essential component of this path is meditation. Meditation will show you the truth. And the truth is nothing other than the unshakable knowledge of your divine nature. We need to go into that knowing. We all know a lot intellectually. We've read, we're learned, we know a lot. But we haven't been touched by the experience. And that is what gives us this true knowing. The experience will transform us. There is no other way to know God than by meditation. It's the only way. That's the beginning. There's another beautiful anecdote in AY of young Mukunda who receives an experience in cosmic consciousness by his guru Sri Yukteswar. We know he had been seeking, and he traveled the Himalayas, visiting saints and sages, looking incessantly for that experience. So here he is in the hermitage of his guru, trying to meditate, his thoughts flying all over the place like leaves in a wind. His guru calls to him. He ignores him. He thinks his guru always counseled, meditate. So he ignores him. The guru called him again and again. Eventually, he attends to his guru's request. And he says, I didn't answer the first time because I was meditating. And his guru said, yes, you were meditating with your thoughts like leaves in the wind. And he says, poor boy, you couldn't find what you wanted in the Himalayas. And then he touched him with his finger on the sternum. And Yogananda had an experience in cosmic consciousness. And I'd like to read a little excerpt from that experience of what young Mukunda had at that time. An oceanic joy broke upon calm, endless shores of my soul. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light. The swelling glory within me began to envelope towns, continents, the earth, solar and stellar systems, tenuous nebulae, and floating universes. The entire cosmos, gently luminous, like a city seen afar at night, glimmered with the infinitude, within the infinitude of my being. This is where we're going in meditation. This is what the inner kingdom has to offer. And that experience was not just for him. That experience awaits us too. Everything the great masters wrote about, that is something that we can access for ourselves. Once our thoughts subside, once the emotions are stilled, the inner kingdom is revealed. And we didn't need to go anywhere to find it. We just needed to let go of what was blocking our perception of it and increase our knowing. There's a story of the great saint, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who used to go around Calcutta, all over India, but in this case, she was in Calcutta, looking for the poor, the ill, the needy, and the destitute to minister to them. And on this one particular day, she found an old woman, her body ravaged with leprosy, who had been left on a garbage dump to die. Her children had brought her there and left her there. They didn't want to take care of her. They left her there. So Mother Teresa comes up to her, puts her arm around her and starts ministering to her. And the woman looks at her confused and says, "Why are you doing this?" And Mother Teresa says, "I'm doing this because I love you." She said, "How is that possible? My children, my own kin don't love me and they've left me here. How is it possible that a stranger would love me?" And Mother Teresa answered, "I don't know what goes on in your children's minds. All I know is what goes on in my heart. And I love you." So the woman let herself be embraced and held by Mother Teresa and died in her arms. So that woman must have had a terrible life. And yet she died in a state of grace, in the arms of a saint, a great saint. There is nothing in life greater than the experience of God. Nothing comes close to it. So we need to cultivate a deep, rich, intimate experience with the divine. Nobody can teach you that. Everybody has a very unique experience. Just like the experience you had with your parents, your partners, your children. Nobody taught you how to be in relationship with them. Same thing with God. You need to develop a living relationship with the divine, because that is the only thing that will transform you. There was a villager sitting by the side of a road once, and a priest walked by and stopped in front of the villager, looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" And the villager looked up, radiant face, and said, "I'm looking at God, and he's looking at me." When we reach the point of seeing God everywhere, that's when the inner kingdom, you know you're living in the inner kingdom. This connection with God starts in meditation. Yogananda's words, the purpose of meditation is to calm the mind that without distortion, it may mirror omnipresence. I continue in Yogananda's words. The ultimate proof of God's existence will come through your own experience in meditation. Once you have found him in the cathedral of silent meditation in the depths of your soul, you will find him everywhere. And I'll end with this little excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita in our reading today, where Krishna is talking to Arjuna and describes the yogi for him. He says, steadfast a lamp burns, sheltered from the wind. So steadfast, the lamp is burning, an oil lamp. The flame is steady. And that steady flame is the light of your individual consciousness that burns brightly in the windless silence within. That's where we go in meditation. Steadfastly meditating, solitary. Doesn't mean you're alone on some faraway mountain. Here and here, you're not entertaining. Mind is calm. And you're dedicating yourself with wholehearted dedication to your meditation. That develops the whole heart, the complete heart for the divine. When you give something completely. That's what you offer to the divine. Such is the likeness of the yogi's mind, shut from sense storms and burning bright to heaven. So we may choose to go outside and find a little entertainment, a little fleeting happiness, or we can go within and find bliss. Or we can choose to look outside and find some excitement. Or we can choose to look within and find ecstasy. The outer world or the inner kingdom. The choice is always ours. Now we'll have